I'm Orland. Okay, I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of the Texas software, specifically on the industrial engines or generators, so you can see the coverage, but also see a bit of an example of as to how the software works with regard to electronic diagnosis. Um, as you can see, this is our main screen. Like I think I mentioned in the email before, we operate in all 5 environments. So we've got car, truck, off-highway, bike or motorbike, and marine. I won't go into the other ones because they are quite in depth, but I can certainly do some other videos at a later stage to show those for the other guys. So yeah, under car, obviously we've got supercar, we've got pickups, vans, and so on. Truck, we have trailers, semi-trailers, industrial engines, transmissions, auxiliary heating systems, and so on. Off-highway, which we'll go into in a sec. Bike, obviously motorbike, the full range, and same with marine, inboards, outboards, and marine generators as well. So we'll look at the off-highway. I'll click into here and you can see it's broken down into category. So we've got agricultural vehicles, construction and special vehicles, forklifts and telehandlers, train and industrial engines. Now, what we're looking at for your interest is the industrial engine side of things. So if we click into there, and what we're faced with is a make list, A to Z. So you can see we start off with Caterpillar and Cummins, and I'll just scroll down slowly so you can see the other manufacturers. So you can see it's pretty comprehensive. The D's basically mean that I've got a demonstration mode, so if I'm not actually connected to an engine, I can still run a program within the software so you can at least see how it reacts to that information. So just because we've discussed MTU, I'll click on MTU, and that takes us to the sort of the same screen no matter what we're plugging into, car, truck, bike, whatever. This is the same format throughout the software. So what we've got here, we've got global system scan. Now this is more applicable to CAN bus systems on trucks and cars and so on, where there's a multitude of systems to connect to. So it gives it like a general health check. Very useful, but obviously for the engines themselves or just the generators, we're just focusing on the engine. So not, like I said, not so applicable now. But you can see below we've got diagnosis by system, so we've got diesel injection and the SCR DPF AdBlue after treatment system. What we've also got here is the abilities of the system, so the actions that we can perform on the vehicle. So what Tex has done, they've split down vehicle maintenance, sort of basic service resets, things like that, to activations, which are tests that you can perform to make sure components are working correctly, and then adjustments and coding, where you can actually change or calibrate or more involved procedures. So just on this MTU, we'll have a quick flick into these. So quick service, there's a couple there, forced regen of the particulate filter. Under engine, we can reset the fuel filter values after service or component replacement. Activation wise, again, it's split down into the systems, so I'll just scroll down slowly. You can see there's quite a few tests that we can perform. Basic stuff like cylinder cutoff, solenoid turning on and off, just checking systems, as I said. So there's a few options there on the SCR side of things. As long as it is a later type, these would be applicable. These are all the options that would be available for the MTU. Doesn't necessarily mean every engine that we plug into, depending on the ECU, will have all these options, but you get the gist of what we are capable of. And then into activations and adjustments and coding, same again, just a little bit more involved. So again, regenerations in there, but EGR calibrations, injector classification, down into again the AdBlue regen situation, but also initialization of various sensors. So there's a good few options there. Now what we'll do, we'll enter the demo mode as I mentioned, we'll pick this one obviously because we've got a demo mode on it. Click through to here, and then we'll just let this load up the program. Okay, so what we're now into is again the same format of screen that you would see across the range or across the vehicles, across the environments that we deal in. It'll always take you to the fault screen, and on this program that it's got loaded there, it's loaded up 3 faults. Now Texa works on a traffic light system, so if there's an active current fault, then it'll be red triangle, and we'll say an active underneath. If it were a memory fault, you'd see an amber triangle and something that we can normally try and clear before then running the engine again to see if anything reoccurs. So for example, we'll pick the fuel temperature sensor. Now you can see on the right hand side here there's a few faded out options here, but what happens is if they are listed there, they then appear in the bottom right hand corner as again options. So what you've got here is a direct link to a wiring diagram for that sensor. You've got freeze frame technology, which basically tells you what was going on with the engine at the time that fault occurred, so can be very useful. There's a troubleshooting forum, which is something Texa host, and that's information from around the world. Where a fault occurs, there might be available fixes or solutions that you can look for. The other one is just a help question mark, so again it'll tell you hopefully a little bit more about that fault and maybe suggest some ways to fix it. So for example, on this one, the fuel temperature sensor, will click on the question mark, and okay, so it gives us a few possible causes of the failure. A lot of these are quite standard, but at the same time still quite useful to start looking for. So everything from just corrosion, an open circuit, or could be potentially a mechanical fault. This is the thing, it's not always going to be an electrical sensor issue, it could actually be the component fault itself. So so again, it gives you instructions as to what to start checking for. So we'll come out of there. Freeze frame technology, again we can look, and what it does, it tells you, depending on the vehicle, obviously you can imagine for truck you have a whole long list of parameters that it's recorded. But for example, on this one, it gives you the total operating hours, the frequency that fault has occurred, the day, the time, and so on. So a lot of useful information for you to work with. The last one, like I said, is the wiring diagrams. Now this will take us directly to, we'll still have to make a choice here, but it'll take us into the wiring diagrams that are designed by Texa in-house or reverse engineered in-house. So you can see, just by hovering, they're all interactive. Just by hovering over the component, it gives you the details of that component. It also tells you on a lot of occasions the location of that component. What you've also got up here is a component device location. So again, obviously it's picked because this engine is used in off-highway, it has picked a tractor, but so obviously for generators it's not going to be particularly useful, but you can imagine on other vehicles it is. So again, we can click on these items. We've got a connector or connection information, so pin configuration basically. So every manufacturer is different, but at least with this you know where everything pins back to and whether which pin is at fault. So again, quite useful. Now what you've also got is, by clicking into these items, you will have images but also data cards. So on this one, for example, we have a data card and we have a generic check sheet. So this is something that basically explains a little bit about the component that we're looking at. It gives you information on that, gives you operating principles, tells you how it works. There's a lot of technical information in the system. It's not purely just a fault finding tool. Recommended checks, so again, continuity checks and so on. It takes you right down. Amps, clamps, I'm scrolling down quite quickly, but I think you get the gist of the sort of information that's in there. There's also a list that you can access, a key, so you can scroll through all those items. You can then pick, right, I want to look at the coolant pump solenoid valve. It'll then take you to that item, and then again you can look at the data card for that item. So very useful, and you can imagine they do get incredibly complex, but there's a good deal of information here. So we'll come back out of here, just go back to this main screen for a while. Just along the bottom here, we can obviously error clear if there are memory faults. We can also save this information, which actually saves this into the software, into your customer management system. So actually you can build up a database of all your vehicles every time you plug in, every time you make a fix, and just keep that detailed history. You've also got access to the technical documents, so again, wiring diagrams, vehicle sheets and system sheets. We'll get to those in a while, and you can also print all this information. So just looking at these other tabs, just before we go to parameters, ECU info, so this will obviously pull out all the information from the ECU that we're communicating with. So I'll just scroll down softly, and you can see there's a lot of information in there. Okay. The last two tabs are activations and settings. So these were the things we were looking at earlier, the shortcuts on the main page. Again, this is just once you're actually communicating, this is where you can then click the help button, and then it'll guide you through the process, or at least explain what you're going to do. And then once you click start, it will then guide you through the process of what you need to do. Same with the settings. Again, there's a lot of settings here on this particular one that the program's based around. So again, more information there as to what you can do. Okay, so just once we've done those, going to parameters. So this is all your live data. So this is the most important thing for you to actually monitor what's going on with the engine while you're communicating with it. It'll take a second just to load up all the information. So what you've got is a reasonable, well, on this particular program, we've got 104 parameters, 104 sensors that we're monitoring. So there's a reasonable description on the left hand side, and then on the right hand side we've got a reading and a unit of measure. Obviously this is all over the place, it's just an example, but for example on the battery voltage, you see we're reading 28.51 volts. There's also question marks here. On a lot of occasions you're seeing readings, you might not necessarily know whether they're good readings, only through experience and looking at good engines versus bad engines. But what they are starting to do is put question marks into the readings, so at least then it'll give you an idea of what the possible values should be. So a bit of information there. Okay, so you can see there's 104 sensors down here, so there's quite a few. As we scroll down, the right hand side will populate everything. Basically any sensor that's connected with that ECU on the engine, we will be able to read, and you will be able to monitor those readings. Obviously there is quite a few there, so you can click on favorite parameters just down in the left hand corner here, and that then splits it down into all temperatures, percentages, pressures, mass flows, and so on. So it just makes it a little bit easier for you to read. While it is like that, you are able to do up to a 30-minute record. So basically you can go out, well, with the vehicle obviously you can go out for a test ride or test drive, but with this you can just let the engine run for up to 30 minutes and record the sensors that you're interested in, which is very useful. But what we can do is obviously filter that list as well, so not just going by what TEXA has separated them out as. You can actually just pick the sensors you want to look at, create your own list, and then you can back to favorite parameters, and you can then create a recording for that as well, you see. Okay, so we'll just come back out of there. The other bells and whistles, I guess, is the best way to describe it, is what I'm highlighting here, which is called dashboard. So what that'll do, that'll have some already framework of displaying the parameters in a very good way, a very understanding way. So we click on this. Obviously we're not going to get all 104 sensors, but it puts it in a nice diagram, a better visual display for you to read those live readings. So you can see that they are the live readings, they're just in a nice format. So we've got a couple of pages there. So depending on the complexity and depending on what information we've got in the system, that will obviously populate here. There's a variety of other things we can do on here, but hopefully you get the gist of this. I mean, the other thing we can do is something as basic as just double clicking each sensor, and you're going to be able to follow a line diagram, which obviously when you're recording or you're monitoring, it's much easier to see a peak or a trough rather than a flicker in a number. So again, quite useful. There's again a lot more to explain about this. We're able to again take more recordings and a variety of other bits and pieces, screenshots and so on. But hopefully you get the gist of what we're talking about here. So we'll just end communication with that, or end the demonstration program. Now, just take you over to the left-hand side. So what we have here, we've got manual identification. Now this is where once you've created a bit of a customer management or a customer database, this is where you would then enter that information. So once you've got the correct makes, models and selections, that can all be saved. Wiring diagrams, like I said, on this, we looked at those earlier. This is again just a shortcut to those. Technical data sheets, there's some notes on AdBlue here. There's also some information there on ACM system sheets, and then vehicle sheets. Again, these are more generic, but still could be quite useful. So we'll just come back to industrial engine. So we'll come out of the MTU. I just wanted to choose John Deere as an example, just to show you another area of information that we've got. So again, you can see similar format, but just on this left-hand side here, the additional technical data and checks. Now this is on a lot of them, but not all. It's more like car and truck, where we click into this and it's the mechanical data. So for example, if you're picking a particular model, this is where you can look at information such as lubricants, capacity levels, tightening torques, all sorts of information, layouts, the sorts of information you'd need to talk to the dealer about, bolt configuration and so on. So there's a lot of information in there to help you when you're diagnosing. Electrical system, engine and accessory timing. So again, shows you how to time the engine, and a bit of information with regards to the belts there. Settings and emissions, again, a bit of information there for you. So yeah, a variety of information in there. So like I said, there's a bit of a whistle-stop review, or at least give you an idea of the generators or the industrial engines that we can communicate with. So hopefully this has been quite useful. Any questions, please give me a shout. Okay, thank you.